Okay, today we're in chapter 3 of the book of Proverbs. Now, if we just open it up and take a look at chapter 3, and we say, is there any way that we could break it down, outline it, or is it just a bunch of verses that are put together? And so we read these different verses and try to make some sense out of it. Let me put it this way. If you turn over to the book of Proverbs and you read and study what we did last week, of which we studied the first 12 verses last week, you would find that as you studied here in the first 8 verses, it tells you the good things about wisdom. And remember, that's what this book is about. The first 9 chapters is talking about wisdom. And it, in fact, is so much so that it impersonates wisdom, that it takes wisdom and makes a human out of wisdom. And it says, now, if there was a human made out of wisdom, just totally 100% fully wisdom, and Mr. or Mrs. Wisdom was talking to you, what would wisdom say? So that's what you have in the first 9 chapters. That here's what wisdom would tell you. So in the first 7 verses, you find what wisdom will do for you. It'll give you length of days and do all of those good things. Then in verse 9, down through verse 12, it's going to tell you some bad things about getting wisdom. That is that anybody that hears what wisdom will do, I think would say, I want wisdom. I would really like to have wisdom. Well, God has promised us wisdom. In fact, in James 1 and verse 3 says, if you lack wisdom, ask of God, and He'll give it to you. So He's promised us wisdom. So many of us would think, okay, I want it. Lord, please give me wisdom. That's kind of like money, riches, isn't it? I'd like to be a millionaire. Well, the Lord will bless me, I know that. So Lord, make me a millionaire. Now, let's go play golf. Let's go have some fun. See? Well, you know that you would say that if I did that, you'd call me a playboy. You'd say, you're not serious. You don't have any wisdom at all. If you expect God to bless you with money, you're going to have to do some work, and God will bless you. He will reward you. Now, the same thing with wisdom. Just think, without us going through it again, think what a tough thing this is. He said in verse 9, honor Jehovah with all thy substance. And he goes ahead and he says, honor Him with all of your possessions. Okay. Now, that's a little tough. I wasn't thinking about that aspect of it when I asked God for wisdom. I wasn't expecting Him to say, okay, now your first class, as you start in here to get wisdom, is learn how to always put God first. Always honor Him with your physical things. Honor Him with your money, with your physical possessions. He comes first in all of this. Okay, that's not as easy as I thought. Now, back it up just a little bit. And in verse 5, he says, now, trust in Jehovah with all thy heart. Then he goes ahead and he says, don't lean on your own understanding. Don't trust yourself. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Wow, another hard thing to do. Now, if I'm really going to be wise, and I really want wisdom, it's going to be hard for me not to trust myself. It's going to be hard for me to say, okay, if I really want wisdom, the first lesson I have to learn is I don't know anything. And so I have to trust Jehovah with all my heart. That's the toughie. Not just trusting Him with little, but trusting Him with all my heart and then honoring him with all of my substance. And then the next is perhaps the hardest of all. My son, despise not the chastening of Jehovah. And it goes ahead to say, if the Lord loves you, he'll chasten you, or he'll chastise you. Or as we talked about last week, he will bring you up in the proper way that a child should be brought up. He will see that you receive the discipline you need as a child. Because he said, whom the Lord loveth, them he chasteneth. Now, we'll all get a chance to watch Scott in the next, 18 years? Going to be a good lesson for us. It's going to take 18 years for us to see it all. But we watch him as he chastens Gus. Now, he loves the boy, and he wants that boy to turn out to be a perfect boy. Now, what do you expect him to do? Do you expect him to ever give the child a spanking? Do you ever expect him in here to look up and see Gus running all over things and picking up some things and throwing them, and for him to yell, Gus, you get back here and now grab him by the nape of the neck, and you see him disappear? And you say, oh, no, poor kid. Scott doesn't like that kid. Is that what we would say? No, we're going to say, okay, as we see him discipline the child, we know he does that because he loves the child. Now we turn our attention to God, and what do we expect out of God? God is going to discipline us. God is going to tell us no. He's going to tell us stop. He's going to see that we are hindered in many ways, and many problems are brought into our life. You see, it's not all peaches and cream in obtaining wisdom. But now then, if we do that, then we start in verse 13 and down to about verse 23, somewhere in here, well, about 26. He tells us what wisdom will do for us. Now, I want to ask you this question, and this is pretty well summed up. If God talked to you, let's say when you were 20 years old, you were old enough to understand, and so you didn't make some offhand, stupid decision, but you were up there in your late teens or something. And God says, now there is a way in which I tell you what I'll do with you. I'm going to turn you loose and let you do what you want to do, and you're going to end up with some real unhappy things. Or there's another thing I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you happiness and understanding, and I'm going to give you profit. I'm going to give you things that are worth more than silver and gold. I'm going to give you a long life and honor while you're living. I'll give you happiness and knowledge, and I will bless you in every way so that your foot doesn't stumble and you won't be living a life full of fear and afraid, because you'll be firmly planted. Now, which life do you want? Well, you'd say, my, oh my, that's what I want. Here it is, I can get all of these things plus some riches or plus some physical things. Wow, that's the greatest thing that I ever heard. That's what this section is going to say. So let's read it, and let's see now how it tells us this. He said, happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the gaining of it is better than the gaining of silver, and the profit thereof than of gold. She is more precious than rubies, and none of the things thou canst desire are to be compared unto her. Wow, wow, wow. What is wisdom worth? Wisdom is worth more than all the billions of dollars that you see in these famous men, the billionaires, the Bill Gates of this world. As you look at them, you'll find that they all have a lot of problems. But here he says, I'm going to show you how to get wisdom, and wisdom will be more valuable than all the gold, all the silver, all the riches that you could ever get in this life. Wisdom will be more valuable than all the riches that you could ever desire. You just try to think about how rich you would like to be, and wisdom is more valuable than all of that. Because wisdom will help you get what you need in this life physically, plus it will help you to be able to use it in the proper way, and happiness is going to follow you in life. Happiness and all of these things that you enjoy so much, you're going to have it, along with being able to be blessed with your daily bread. Now, it's hard for us to understand, but wisdom is more precious than rubies or anything we can possibly think about. Now he goes ahead and he tells us why that's true. He said, length of days is in her right hand, and her left hand are riches and honor. Now, if you really get wisdom, here's how you can kind of expect to go through life. Wisdom in your right hand is going to give you a long life. You're going to be able to live a long life on this earth. You'll be living a life that doesn't cut your life short, but it's one that will give you a long life. And then your left hand, you're going to be able to live that way with some riches that God will see that you do prosper. When you go through life and you make proper decisions and you make wise decisions, then generally you're going to find that physical things will follow you and God will bless you in that way. So he said then, so long life and riches. 17, her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Now, her ways are pleasantness. Now, you're going to be able to live a life that is pleasant. It's a happy life. It's a fun life. It's a contented life. It's a pleasant life. How many people may have riches and gold, but they don't have a pleasant life? You start looking at your famous movie stars. Or most of us, I think, have seen this letter that comes around on the email every 5-10 years. About 20 people, I guess, well-known people, from Rockefellers, Marilyn Monroe, right on down. Take all of the rich people, famous people in this world, and then it tells how they ended up, how each one of them ended up in such a miserable way. Right now it comes to my mind in this generation, this last week, is that Anna Nicole Smith. And so we take a look at her and we know all of a sudden there it is in her prime, in the beauty of her age, she died. She was very, very rich. All those other people were living off of her. Very, very rich. But how happy was she? See? She had to have those drugs every day, a miserable, unhappy individual. What's happened to the people who were with her that act like it was so much fun? That life was such a pleasant life, going to the Bahamas. What are they doing? They didn't live a life of wisdom. And now then, a couple of them going to jail. They've spent all this period of time wondering what's going to happen. And it's just a life of misery. That's what he's saying here, that if you take wisdom, you will miss all of that. Now, the wisdom, had she lived in that way, she would have missed all of that sorrow that she had, because she wouldn't have tried to find her happiness and solace in drugs. So this is what the writer is telling us. He's telling us, here's what I will give you. It will be a life of pleasure, and it will be a life of peace, of where people are not always going to be after you and trying to cause you troubles. It's going to be a life of peace. There are a lot of rich, wealthy people that they walk around all the time, and they have to have bodyguards everywhere, and they jumping every time something happens to them, and it's not a life of peace, but he said that wisdom will give you that. And in 18, she is a tree of life to them that lay hold on her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. So here it is, she's a tree of life. Now, that brings up the tree of life in the garden, doesn't it? And all of us, I guess, have thought about if we had been Adam, what would we have done? Here's a man and a woman given the tree of life. And had they just obeyed God, how wonderful their life would have been. And so we say, boy, what a change. Here it is, you have that tree of life. And finally, they disobeyed. God drove them from the garden so they wouldn't have access to the tree of life. Now then, God says, wisdom is a tree of life to you. If you want to enjoy life, have long life, have a pleasant life, have a happy life, then devote your life to trying to obtain the one thing that will give you all of these happiness, and that is wisdom. So she's a tree of life, and happy is every one that retaineth her. So when people grab hold of wisdom and they retain her, they hold on to her. Now, this is the reason why I say, as we're talking about personifying wisdom, Mr. or Mrs. Wisdom, I especially throw in the Mrs. there because he uses this as a her. In other words, if you get wisdom and you retain her. So as we're thinking about wisdom and this person talking, perhaps we should think about some woman who is filled full of wisdom, never makes a mistake, and she's giving advice to her children, is what he's saying that she should do. So, happy is every one that retaineth her. Now, it might do us good to sit down, write down all those things that wisdom will give us. And we would be surprised of all the different things it'll give us. Generally, when we hear about riches, why that perks up our ears. Oh, yeah, okay. So we get that. But how many other things do we get about the quality of life, about the pleasantness of life? It's fun and happy and being unafraid, as we'll read here in just a moment. See, all of these things go with this. Now, in verse 19, he now is going to show us how valuable wisdom really is. That if you take wisdom, you see how valuable it really is. Okay, before we go any farther, let's look at it in this way, and we'll come back to it. Let's go back and take a look at God before he ever created the heavens and the earth. We do this a lot of times in showing that God made plans. God planned before the creation of the heaven and the earth that he would save us through Christ. So back there, before God ever created the heavens and the earth, God was in heaven and God made plans. And God made plans that he was going to create the heavens and the earth and that he was going to put people on us. He made plans, the kind of people he would put. Then he made plans that if we disobeyed him, here's what he would do in order to save us. God made all these plans. But God also made plans that when he created the heavens and the earth, here's how he'd do it. So now I'm going to create the heavens and the earth. Now there's some things that I can look at and I can see that just boggles my mind. I don't have to read it in the Bible, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say that because Romans 1:20 says that. He said if you want to see that there is a God, you don't have to read it. You go out and you look at nature. So you go out and you look at the stars. And you see, just with your naked eye, that there are thousands upon thousands of stars. And then you invent a telescope. And then you go on out farther. And there are millions upon millions of stars. And then you enhance your telescope. And then you see there are billions and billions and billions of stars. And then you do something so you can see farther, And then you find that there are trillions and trillions and trillions of stars. And then you do something where you can see farther, and then you find that there are billions and billions and billions of galaxies with trillions and trillions of stars. And last week, science came out and says we've seen the farthest thing so far in the universe. They've enhanced that new telescope. I think they've enhanced the Hubble telescope right now. And they've seen it way out there, the farthest that there are, and so many stars, and so you can't even talk about it. So now, you look at all this, and see, we can't even understand a billion. And yet you find all of these things, and you find that these stars are billions and billions of times bigger than our sun and earth put together. And you look at it. Now let's stop and let's bring it back down to where we can understand it. God, in all of His wisdom, made that. He made that. So we say, why did He make it so big? I don't know. But God, in all of His wisdom, made that. And then I get to looking and see, well, here's what it does. At least there's one thing. He made it so big that mankind on this earth, using all of his ingenuity, will never be able to find out how big God made the universe. And then he goes to the other way and makes these little minute particles that now we get down and we can't even see them. And the only thing we can do is to try to invent that atom collider and try to hit two atoms together. And it's so small you can't see it. And then see if you can see the track that it leaves. So you can't even talk about it. And yet that's just starting. It just goes on and on and on. How did God do all that? How did He fix all that so it's all in order? See, well, He starts out right here and He tells us something that's just very simple to any of us, that we can just walk out on the ocean shore. And He says, 19, Jehovah by wisdom founded the earth. That's how He made all these things. That's why He made them. That's why He made them the size He did make them. It's all done by wisdom. Because if you take anything out of order, it's going to cause a lot of problems. And not only did He make it by wisdom, then He goes ahead and He says, by understanding He established the heavens. So how did He make the earth? Wisdom. How did He make the heavens? Wisdom. You know, that's how big wisdom is. See, now, we'll stop right here, and the reason I went back to this is this. Now, when we go back and we think about God creating the heavens and the earth, the first thing that I think about is power. Just awesome. When God spoke, the power that He had, the whole universe came into existence. The power is awesome. So we stop and we think, the power that God had is unbelievable. What about His wisdom? How did He think of so many trillions and trillions of things, little minute things, of how they're interwoven into one another? How did He do all of that? It was through wisdom. So how much wisdom does God have? Well, I guess if you could tell me how much power He has, I can start to understand it. It's just an infinite amount. Without power, God could never have made the universe. And without wisdom, He could never have made the universe. So that's what Mrs. Wisdom is trying to tell us. Mrs. Wisdom is trying to say, look, let me tell you people something. Let me tell you something that is at your fingertips. Let me tell you something that you have access to. But as human beings, you're blind. You walk upon it, you trot it in the mud, you run across it, you go around it, you set up on it, but you never see it. You never see it, or if you see it, you look at it and you decide, oh, it's not worth getting. That's what these first 9 chapters are about, is to try to tell us, human beings, let me show you how wonderful wisdom really is. And let me show you how to get it. There's a way that you can obtain it. He says now in verse 20, by his knowledge the depths were broken up, and the skies dropped down the dew. So it was through knowledge. It wasn't an accident. When God made the universe and he made the oceans to stop where they stop, that wasn't an accident. It was by his knowledge that he made it so that oceans cover 2/3 of the world, land covers 1/3. Now just right offhand, had you given me the formula and said, Lowell, if we're going to make a new earth, do you think we should make it 2/3 salt water and 1/3 land, or vice versa? It wouldn't have taken me very long to figure that out. Make it 2/3 land. That way we could have more, we could have more space to live on. We could have more land to grow things on. We could have more gold mines to dig. Why, anybody know you ought to make it at least 2/3 land, see? So what he says is, God did it by wisdom. God did it by knowledge in all of this. And the skies dropped down the dew. So we say, okay, how about what happens out of the skies? What comes down? Well, now here's another thing that most of us are pretty displeased with, aren't we? In reality, how much dew do we have coming down in the state of Washington? Well, we have it on the grass. And then you say, I wouldn't mind it if you had a little dew in the morning, but it rains, and then it rains all day, and we just get too much rain. It's just a bad place. I'm going to move. It's just a bad place. See, and so we don't like all the rain we get. You go to a desert, and nothing grows, but everything that's out there has thorns on it or poison in it, and you say, boy, this is terrible. You know what I'd like? I would like a real sunny, warm climate, 365 days a year. I don't want it to freeze and get too cold. Oh, I'd like a little frost just to give me, that comfort zone that you get in there. But I would like to have this. Then I'd like to have the rain so we could have some green things. I don't want to just have to live on eating sand. And I'd like this, and I'd like that. And so we could come up with something pretty good, couldn't we? But you look out and you see the earth. And you see it, and all of a sudden, you see how it's well balanced. You look and you say, wow, look at how balanced this earth is. How everything works. The Sahara Desert works with the state of Washington. We all work together to give it balance. And then you see the thunderstorms come. And we see that at different places around the world, and they curse the thunderstorms and so forth. And we have one that makes the news, and it's just awesome thing. Well, stop to think. Here's what they found out. As God made that liquid come down out of the sky, God made it so that there has to be 1,800 thunderstorms going on in this world at any given moment. That's the interesting thing. Right now, I'm telling you what science tells us. Right now, if you could count the thunderstorms in the world, there'd be about 1,800 of them going on right now. Thunder and lightning storms. Day and night. And they say that if that stopped, and just a small amount, I think it's 20 seconds or something like that it would discharge the ionosphere and we'd all be dead. Wow. You mean those thunderstorms in Florida have something to do with us up here? Yeah, you wouldn't be here this morning if there weren't thunderstorms around the world. How balanced is that? God asked Job one time. He said, do you understand the balancing of the clouds and so forth? Do you understand all of these things? Now, what all this is about in the book of Proverbs is this. Now, in the book of Job, he's given it to show how powerful God is. God is trying to show, look, Job, I want to show you the power of God. I want to show you how smart I am. Here, he said, I want you to see how wise God is. And if you want some of the wisdom, this book says you can have it. So then he goes on, he says, keep sound wisdom and discretion. So they'll be in thy life unto thy soul and grace to the neck. It'll make you look good. You will be one of those people that stand out because of the wisdom that you have. Then shalt thou walk in thy way securely. Thy foot shall not stumble. You're going to live a good, peaceful, wholesome life. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yet thou shalt lie down, and sleep shall be sweet. You're not going to have to worry about what's happening to you and be afraid that when you wake up tomorrow, something bad is going to be there. Neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh, for Jehovah will be thy confidence and will keep thy foot from being taken. So you're going to be able to live a peaceful life. You're going to be able to go to bed and you're going to be able to sleep that night. You're not going to be rolling and tossing, wondering when somebody's going to come and cause you problems. I'm going rather slowly here to try to impress us with what the book is trying to impress us with. And what this book is trying to impress us with is that, as James says, if you lack wisdom, pray for it and God will give it to you. And it's trying to show us how important wisdom is, what it will do for us, and yet to a small extent, what it will cost us. Okay, class dismissed.